Anglesey loads of times. I'm a druid.
Dwi'n caru Bryn Celli Ddu. Mae teulu fi mam yn dod o'r Ynys Môn, ond really Saesneg ydw i. Dwi ddim yn siarad llawer o Gymraeg, so I'll speak in English. My grandparents lived in PG when I was growing up, and I remember a lot of trips to the burial chamber, which was mostly a kind of playground for me. I don't think I could really tell it apart from a children's playground at a young age, because it had a mound you could run up and a funny little tunnel you could run down. I remember as I got older, and I learnt quite how old it was, that was quite a surprise. And it was around the same time my grandfather, who was a vicar, was telling me about the Bible. And I remember thinking, if this place is that many millennia old, how come it doesn't feature in the Old Testament? But it is really such a beautiful spot that you come to so quickly after crossing the bridges, and it's such a great introduction to all the prehistory on Anglesey. And I think often, because of where it is right by the Straits, it would have stood there around that time when Tacitus describes the Roman invasion of Anglesey. It would have been there in those fields between PG and Bryn Celli that day when the Druids stood on the shore, frightening the Roman army who'd never seen anything quite like it. And I think that's quite an extraordinary thing, really.
Roedd fy nhaid yn arfer dod â fy mrawd a minnau i'r lle hwn. Roedd gias wrth fynediad i'r siambr yn y dyddiau hynny. Cyn hyn, roedd mur cerrig yn amgylchynu'r safle, amgaeedig gan goapan o goed. Cyn hyn, roedd ffermwr yn cropian ar ei bedwair i dreiddio i'r siambr. Cafodd ei syfrdanu gan y garreg bilar tebyg i'w wraith fel ysbryd. Cyn hyn, mae Henry Rowlands yn galw'r lle yn llwyn llwyd. Cafodd llwyn llwyd ei ddifrodi'n fawr, y cerrig wedi ei dwyn allan o'r twmpath i'w defnyddio mewn muriau cerrig. Cyn hyn, defnyddid y pwll defosiynol ar gyfer offrymau esgyrn clust. Cyn hyn, roedd yn gylch.
I was on a little walking tour of the coastline of Anglesey via the megalithic sites when I first came across the burial chamber. When I arrived, I FaceTimed my mum because I thought she would like to see it. As I walked through the entrance of the chamber, she shouted out that she could see an orb fly across the camera. She's a big fan of that Derek Acorah TV programme, Most Haunted, so she knows all the signs of paranormal activity. I took no notice of all that nonsense, but she told me not to muck about in places like that. We finished the call and I hung up, and I just spent a few minutes there on my Tobler, just having a think. I wanted to spend much longer there, but I had tons of walking left to do that day before the sun went down, so I headed on. 10 days of rain-soaked boots squelching later, I crossed back over the Menai suspension bridge and couldn't shake the 5 minutes I spent at the burial chamber. The stillness of my brief time sat there echoed and rippled through my head. Maybe it was the ghouls my mum saw, or maybe it was just that moment of tender silence I had. Who knows?
It takes decades for the gaze to soften the right way, for the stone's etchings to reveal themselves as illustrations of time. In every moment the groove deepened or the curve curled, and how those sustained semantics speak through centuries. Imagine having so much future ahead of you. Even the capriciousness of language would call for such indelible ink, only for its meaning to be forgotten before the page was weathered bare. I envy their solidity. How so often the rock is quite literally a clock they'd set themselves against to return here, year after year, unaware there would ever be a time that we would fail to recognize each other. Is there enough future ahead of me to become ancient to some future soul? For these carvings, kept on thinner tomes, to have lived long enough for someone to be there, with enough time of their own to forget its grammar.
It was a clear summer day when I visited Bryn Celli Ddu. I was with my best friend, and I remember the anticipation I felt walking down the narrow footpath and turning into the site. There were only 2 other people there, and when they came out, we went inside into the cool of the main chamber. I was very happy to finally see a place I'd heard a lot about. When we came out, there were a couple of people, and then we were on our own at the site. I stopped for a moment because I could hear very faint, old-fashioned fairground music. We had to strain to hear it, but it was definitely there. I'm not sure why, but it made things seem a bit surreal, a little bit otherworldly. Later, we did see a child with a balloon on the bus, so I think there was a fair in the area, but it didn't take away from the slightly odd, magical feeling of the whole experience.
So there I was, inside the chamber, doing the things that one does inside an ancient burial chamber, if that's what it ever was. With me, I had my phone, on which I downloaded a frequency generator, and I had one of those Omniboom 360 Bluetooth speakers that you can listen to the radio in the shower with. I set the tone generator to about 109 hertz, can't remember precisely, and placed it on top of the schist upright that's in the middle of the chamber. And I stood, turned my back to the upright and leant on it, and bizarrely it seemed to fit me perfectly. I projected this specific frequency into the chamber quite loud, and for a few minutes I turned everything off, bent down, I left through the entrance of the chamber, came out into the sunlight. It was a beautiful day. Turned around, and every single stone was engulfed in a silver light, and the silver light was linear, and there were, like, the geometric shape of each stone was illuminated.
Dynogad ffraith, so gwrwyn balanod banraith, chwidogaeth, gohanon gohenyn wyth gwaith, panelai dy dadi hela, llathar ei ysgwydd, lori yn ei law, efgelai gwn goganwch, gif gaff dali dwg dwg. Lledi bisgoi corwg, malban llad llewg, panelai dy dadi fynydd, dyddyfau, peniwg, pengwyddwch, penhedd, pen grigiar fraidd o fynydd, pen pisgored ar derwenydd, o'r sawl y gyrheidau dy dadi a'i gicwain, o wyddwch a llewyn a llwyngau. Ni angau oll nafau o'r